My name is Shannon Reed. I've been a wrestling fan since the mid-1980s. I consider myself a casual historian. I'm also a professional wrestler. This podcast is dedicated to wrestling's glory days. I'm talking about the NWA, Mid-South Wrestling, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and more. Maybe you want to get extreme with ECW. Well, you can do it all right here on this podcast because we're going to have something for everybody. And yeah, we'll talk about modern wrestling as well. So tune in right here on Read This with Shannon Reed. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Read This with Shannon Reed. I am Shannon Reed, and this is going to be a fun episode. I got a very special guest today for the first episode, and I'll get to that in a minute. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and my motivation for starting this podcast. And some of you are watching this on YouTube and seeing a video, and some of you are listening on Spotify or Anchor or whatever it may be. If you're from the Midwest, you may know I'm a professional wrestler. I'm known as the Bully Smasher, Shannon Reed. Basically, I beat up the bullies, I beat up the bad guys, the guys that like to break the rules and like to cheat and stuff like that. I've been wrestling here in Kansas City usually. I'm a former KCXW Kansas City champion. I've been doing that for about 5 years. I'm on a little bit of a sabbatical right now. I've been a wrestling fan since the mid-1980s. I grew up watching like NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, and all the territories. You know, I watched Smoky Mountain Wrestling in the 90s and big ECW fan. And then later I went back and watched all the stuff from Mid-South that was before my time, and I absolutely loved it. The old school stuff is what I really like the most. As far as modern wrestling, I mostly watch New Japan and AEW. I catch some of the WWE big shows. But this podcast here will have a mixture of modern wrestling discussion and old school discussion. Originally, it was going to be primarily an old school podcast, but I'm finding that there's not as many people to talk about old school wrestling with as I thought there would be. Mostly people that maybe remember just 1980s NWA and WWF, but not so much a lot of people that can really talk about Mid-South and Memphis and some of the other territories like that. But as those opportunities come across, I'm definitely going to make sure that we have a lot of that on this program. So expect it to be kind of covering all facets of old school and new school wrestling. As I mentioned, I'm a professional wrestler, and I'm someone that still is a wrestling fan. I'm not one of those wrestlers that looks down on people if they're in the business and they still enjoy it as a fan, and calls people, marks and derogatory terms like that shouldn't even be used anymore. Because, and I've never been one to respond to peer pressure and be like, well, I got to pretend I'm not a fan because I'm a wrestler now. It's not like that. And there's obviously a line you can cross in how you act and behave and things like that. But I enjoy wrestling and talking about wrestling. And if you listen to all the other wrestlers that have podcasts in the world, in this very oversaturated market, they enjoy talking about it too. And so I wanted the chance to have a podcast because I don't have a lot of people to talk wrestling with there being no shows and me taking a sabbatical from wrestling. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to get some of my people on here, my wrestling friends and some historians and even some wrestlers. And we're just going to talk some wrestling, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. So for this first episode, I wanted to have a special guest, and I have one in store. It is none other than an ECW original. If you watched ECW back in the 90s, you might remember a stable called the Baldies. They came around in 1999, 2000. And on this podcast today, my special guest is the Spanish Angel, Angel Medina. You might remember him for his wars with New Jack that he had in ECW. He defeated New Jack at Guilty as Charged 2000 to become King of the Streets. And so that was a famous match of his, and probably the feud he's most famous for. He also teamed with the rest of his stablemates in the Baldies and defeated New Jack and Bulls Mahoney and Axl Rotten in November to Remember. So I remember watching him when I was a teenager. And then back in 2016, I actually got the chance to wrestle him, which was kind of cool because he was a name, and to be in the ring with someone like that. We were actually in a Royal Rumble style match, and then had a 6-man tag later on that night. He's always been a cool guy to me, and I've always enjoyed when I've seen him at shows, and I'm very happy to have him on this podcast. So I hope you enjoy what you hear. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get the episode started. The Bully Smasher Shannon Reed talking to the Kingpin, Angel Medina. All right, everybody, welcome to Read This with Shannon Reed. My special guest is right here. He is none other than the Kingpin, Angel Medina.
What's up, man? I appreciate you. Oh, no, thank you for having me on your first show. I'm really honored to be on your show. I really appreciate you, and I wish you the best of luck. And, I don't want to say best of luck in your future endeavors because that's just a fucking negative. So,
yeah, especially for
but I want to
wish
you success. Yeah, I want to wish you success, man. Podcast is the best thing for you, man. You got the voice for it.
Well, thank you. It's been what, 2-3 years since we've seen each other at a show?
I don't know, man. It's probably so. Yeah, probably 2 years. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, I love that company. It's a great company. It's just I want to lay low key and just relax. But COVID really, the second year I think is because of COVID. So technically we haven't really saw each other for a year professionally, but due to the circumstances of COVID, put us in a bad situation that we couldn't be together on the road.
Right, absolutely. I got a list of questions here. One of them is just, did you watch WrestleMania?
No, I saw a little bit of it, and I really saw a little bit of it, but I didn't see how. I didn't like it because the women's matches were garbage. It was horrible. Because again, when you're a pro wrestler, you don't look at it as a fan. You analyze it, you dissect it, you see what went wrong, what could have been done better. So me watching it was like, oh, it was a train wreck, and I could see the flaws in the mess ups. Of course, there was other matches that were great, absolutely, but it's just certain things that I just saw that I was just like, it was horrible. I didn't like it.
I kind of casually watched it because I'm not really a big WWE guy. I'll usually watch the Rumble and WrestleMania, and that's usually it. Sometimes I might catch some other stuff. I'm more of a New Japan AEW guy when I watch it, but I thought it was, pretty good for the most part, but I missed a lot of the matches. Like I didn't see the match with Bad Bunny, and I missed the
garbage.
Yeah, everyone's saying it's great, but I just it's celebrity matches aren't really my thing. I mean, I know why they do them, but
regardless of what, if it's Bad Bunny, yeah, he did some phenomenal stuff in the ring. But me being an old school wrestler and the mentality, I just look at him like a person who hasn't paid their dues, and I just don't have respect for him because he hasn't paid his dues. I hate sounding like that, but it's just the way I grew up in the business that you had to earn your spot, and it's just how that was instilled in me. So unfortunately, I just can't get past that mindset of just seeing this guy come out of nowhere and think he's such a Billy Badass. I would just beat him up. He'll win. I'll let him win, but he'll know that he was in a battle.
Yeah. My thing is that everyone's giving him props and saying how awesome he was, and maybe he performed well. I didn't see it, but you got to keep in mind that this is one match that was practiced over and over again because this is their guy, this is their celeb, and they made sure that he was ready for this one thing. And if you got a company that's like giving you high level training and just getting you ready for one match, and you just have to not get off a spot or whatever, I mean, you're going to look better. But if you throw him out there in a ring with someone else with just minimal prep, I mean, he's going to look just as bad as everyone else when they're starting out.
Well, the problem is in regards to this type of situation, when you say they prepped him and got him ready for it, it's just that I'm going to sound like a jerk because a lot of guys are going, well, F you, King, whatever. But in the old days, we didn't have those type of luxuries where we had a training center and we were cookie cut out of the same mold and did practice spots and rehearsed and do all that stuff. It was get in the ring, you call the spots, you work, and you have a good match. You have a finishing and you have an ending, and you work and you wrestle and you listen, you pay attention. But from my opinion, and again, I'm not knocking the guys in WWE. I think they're phenomenal athletes. It's just that, again, from the old school mentality, we never had those training centers. We had schools. We learned from Mike Sharp, Johnny Rods, Killer Kowalski. We had those type of environments where everybody was different. So when you got in the ring, you had different styles, so it looked more realistic, not the same type of kick, punch, chop, backflip, doing the same type of spot. You had a different type of flavor. Just because you're from Italy doesn't mean that different towns have different types of ingredients. So one place has a better spaghetti and it tastes different than another place. It's the same thing, but it's just a different style.
Right.
So people go, wow, this is great. I never had this before. It's just different. So I just think it's just again, the old school mentality is just how I was trained, that I just don't see that they have. I hate saying they didn't pay their dues. I just don't think they went through the rough times as most wrestlers.
Right. I mean, they got costume designers, everything's paid for. They got state of the art, rings to train in and all that stuff. So a lot of them, don't go through the independents first. They're discovered either on the football field or because they looked good in a magazine.
Well, no, I agree with you 100%. And it's just that the problem is that you're right, that these guys, never pay their dues on the road. I mean, you're a wrestling enthusiast, and all the stories like the Stone Cold Steve Austin, like I survived on potatoes and tuna fish, Ultimate Warrior and Sting as the Blade Runners, they survived on tuna fish and protein shakes for days and days and days. That's why Sting, when he looks at a can of tuna fish, it gives him the shivers, because he's like, ugh, it just gives you the ills. But when you are hungry and you're on the road and you only have a limited supply of food and you're surviving off the bare minimum just to make it in this business, once you get to the level of success, then you appreciate it more and you value it more, and you don't knock it or you don't judge people. You're like, man, I earned my spot. I'm happy where I'm at, and I appreciate where I'm at because I know where I came from. So that's the problem. These guys are just coming off the streets, from, like you said, the football field, the bodybuilding world. They leave that, they go to the training center. They're getting paid to go to the performance center. So you're getting a paycheck. You train, and then you go to NXT. That's like a spot there. And then once you get to graduation, you go to WWE. So you don't have a struggle. You don't struggle. Everything, and I'm not saying everything's handed to them. It's just that you're not suffering to appreciate what you get. That's just my opinion.
Do you watch any wrestling today? Like any promotions, or you just completely detached from it?
Hell yeah, I'm detached from it. I only watch, I'm not gonna lie to you, I watch a lot of YouTube and I watch old school stuff. I watch NWA and I watch it over and over again. I watch Puerto Rico wrestling. I watch world class wrestling, AWA wrestling. I just watch those type of styles more than I watch AEW. I know you said you like AEW, but it's the drizzling shits. Sorry to say that, but ever since, and again, I'm not knocking the talent, but the thing is, I was watching that oh my god, Dean, and I keep saying Dean Ambrose, John Moxley versus Eddie Kingston, and then the ring exploded with these sparklers. I'm like, are you? Oh, that was horrible. You got a billion-dollar company. What?
You know what though? I laughed so hard that it made the whole show for me. Like it was such a garbage finish that I actually liked it more because it gave me such a huge laugh just that it blew up in their face.
I just think my opinion is that AEW is another a cookie cutter of WCW and TNA, meaning you have a billionaire like a Dixie Carter that doesn't know anything about the business, and you have guys in the business using him to make that quan. They don't want to make the brand better. They're just riding that wave, making as much money as possible before it folds. Before his daddy gets tired of like, hey, I'm not gonna funnel this anymore. Just like Dixie Carter, her uncle or her dad owned an oil company, right. Billions and billions of dollars funneled through TNA or Impact Wrestling. And finally, at a certain point, even though it was a tax write-off, at a certain point, it's like, yo, I'm just throwing money down a well. I don't see any revenue coming. I'm losing more than I'm making. And then that's what happened. And that's my opinion. I don't know what the underline is, but I'm from the outside looking in. That's what I see.
Even though I say I'm an AEW fan, it's
don't
not
defend
like
it. Don't backpedal.
Defend it.
Yeah,
No,
stick
no,
to your
no.
guns.
I want to be clear. Now, if you had said that Smoky Mountain Wrestling sucks, then we'd have a problem.
No, I think
But
Smoking Around Wrestling, that's another one. That's another one. You know, I just
yeah,
don't like this. I just don't. It just doesn't have the luster and the awe factor, like you say, like a Smoky Mountain. Old school. You know, I know you can't see me. I saw you do that. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just missing something. It's just missing that element that give it the wow factor.
yeah, it's not the same. Like if you go back and watch Mid-South Wrestling, which is one of my favorites, if you look at the whole year of 1984, you watch every episode, it has a logical build to the next week's episode, and it's very easy to understand, and the wrestlers are very talented and top level. Whereas if you watch, say, AEW, I've become inclined to the fact that wrestling for me is not what it used to be. Like I still would much rather watch Ted DiBiase wrestle Jim Duggan in the Houston Coliseum. But if I'm going to watch wrestling today, I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just see high spots galore because, they're not going to get the heat that they used to and have the match, capture my imagination like in the past. So let me just see some high spots. Let me just watch Phoenix.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like I said, all those companies from back in the days had a story. It built into a story, and I love all the. I mean, like I said, I wasn't a huge WWE fan when I was a kid, but I did love the Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man match. There's certain matches that are like, wow, this is a great match. I love
Mm.
Ricky Steamboat versus Ric Flair in the Chi-Town. Is it Chi-Town Rumble? Yeah, the Chi-Town.
Yes.
Yeah, great match. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Halloween Havoc. I drooled every Halloween for Halloween Havoc because it had a good concept. Besides the
Mhm.
Abdullah the Butcher and the electric chair gimmick, that's a different story. But I mean, yeah, they had some ones that were like, oh, I can't. But my favorite was Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal.
Mhm.
I loved it. I don't know. It was just a good Halloween gimmick, you know.
Yeah, it was a cool concept. I know they did the one with Sting and Jake Roberts, and there was another one too. Vader and Cactus did one, and that was probably those are the two I remember. And Vader and Cactus, I remember being a lot better than Sting versus Jake.
I think,
Uh,
yeah, Sting versus Jake.
I
Yeah.
think they did a Texas Death Match, if I remember. So when you were growing up, like what wrestling did you watch? Like what's the first kind of wrestling that grabbed your attention?
No, I'm not gonna lie to you. I could still remember it to this day. I could close my eyes and it's just like fresh in my brain. I was in junior high school, and my buddy had uh a wrestling illustrated magazine in his bag, and he was like, his name was Peter, and he was just like, all talk about wrestling. And I'm like, well, I haven't really watched wrestling. He goes, what, you never watched wrestling? And he gives me the magazine, and on the cover of the magazine was the Four Horsemen, and he goes, bro, you have to watch next week on TBS Clash of Champions. Sting is wrestling Ric Flair. I'm like, who? Dude, you got to watch it. It's on TBS. You got to watch it. Clash of Champions. All right, I'll watch it. And you remember that used to be free on TBS, Clash of
Right.
Champions. So I said, okay, I'll watch it. So I got on cable, sat there, and I could remember Eddie Haskell was in the audience, the actor who played Eddie Haskell, the guy from the Wonder Years. Was it Missy? Yeah, I think it was Missy Hyatt sitting there. And dude, I was engulfed in it. It was a science to it. And when I saw it right there, I just drank it all in. And then I just
Mhm.
started watching. I just started watching older, like tapes, of NWA and Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff and the 6-man tag team. I just started watching all that, and then I just started getting more and more and more intrigued in the business. So that's when it started. And junior high school was in the seventh. It was in the 8th grade. No, seventh grade. It was in the 7th grade.
Well, the Clash of Champions was in March of '88, so that's when the Sting Flair match happened at the first Clash. So yeah, March of '88 is when it would have been.
No, I'm sorry. Then it was 8th grade because I got into high school in '88. So that was my final year of junior high. So yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's funny because when you said it was Wrestling Illustrated, what got me hooked into wrestling was also seeing a magazine. Like my mom's boyfriend at the time had a wrestling magazine that had Hulk Hogan and Mr. T on it, and for whatever reason, it captured my imagination. And even though that's not the type of wrestling I really got into, because I was much more of an NWA guy, it was a wrestling magazine.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, actually, I collected them. I still have some in my case up there that I had. I mean, there's some that I was in it, but they don't have wrestling magazines anymore. I don't think so. Do they? No, they stopped.
They still got Pro Wrestling Illustrated, but it's usually really hard to find on newsstands or in stores, but you can order it online. They still do
Okay.
like the PWI 500 and that stuff, but largely it's just a dead business because of the internet. There's just not a need for it.
Yeah, I love them, man, because in the back of the book and back of the magazine, there used to be a role-playing wrestling gimmick on the back where you pick the numbers and your moves and you mail in your money, and then they go by this random number. So you named your character, and then they come back if you're like if you wrestle somebody for the title. I forget. It was in the back of a magazine. I loved it. I used to send my money into it.
I think I did it for like 1 month, and then I just kind of didn't. We didn't have a lot of money, so I probably couldn't have kept doing it for that reason. Did you ever get to attend a NWA show?
I attended an NWA show. No, it was WCW. It was a WCW at the Paramount Theater at Madison Square Garden. So,
Is that the one where Chris Benoit wrestled Ron Simmons?
I can't remember. I remember Sting and Vader. And you know what? I'll look it up. But it was I do remember that, and I just remember I know it was in Madison Square Garden, but it was a section that in that building, like a pavilion, and it was the Paramount, I think, at the time. And it was just a small arena. So because I knew they couldn't perform in the Madison Square Garden section because Vince owned that building, and not owned it, but he had a exclusive deal because of his dad. Johnny Raj used to tell me that they used to have an office. WWF had an office there because that's how locked up they had it. Johnny, yeah. And I'm just looking it up right now.
They tried to block AAA and New Japan from coming into MSG, and luckily that didn't stick.
Well, like I said, it just depends on what Vince had at the time as an agreement. But I just remember it was at the, I got to find the name, but I remember I went there with some tickets and stuff, and I was at SummerSlam's '88 too.
Really?
Yeah, I was there. My buddy Peter again, his brother couldn't go, and he had tickets, and he said, "Hey, my brother can't go. You want to come to Madison Square Garden and watch SummerSlam's '88?" So I'm like, "All right, let's go." And we went, but we're in the nosebleeds. We're up there.
So you didn't really get to see Elizabeth rip her dress, and
no, but I
that would have
remember
been the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks, right?
Yeah, but I remember when fucking Ultimate Warrior ran down the thing, and it was real tiny, and he ran in the ring and beat the shit out of Honky Tonk, did the splash, took the title, spun it over his head, and ran the fuck back out. I remember that. I mean, I remember the whole thing, but yeah.
Yeah, it was either 29 seconds or 31 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, it was like the fastest pin or something like that at the time. But I mean, it was just it was awesome. I had the best time. The Rougeau brothers were there because I remember Peter was yelling at him, calling the calling them the shits and shit.
Yeah,
so
they wrestled the Bulldogs. They were the opening match, time limit draw, went 20 minutes.
Yeah, so they were there. I remember that. Yeah, I think Ken Patera was there because he kept calling him Scrub Patera.
I think he wrestled Bad News Brown.
Yeah, because I remember when Madison. You ever been to Madison Square Garden?
No.
Oh, there's an opening where all the wrestlers come in. It's very accessible for the fans, so it's not enclosed. So you can see like there's not an area where you could park your car. You have to park your car across the street. So a lot of wrestlers had to come across the street and go down this ramp. So you always see him walking down the ramp into the building. So Peter was just like, Scrub Patera. So I always remember that. That was awesome.
Yeah. Is that a friend you still have contact with, or?
No, we lost contact with each other after we went to high school. Oh, hey, here it goes. On April 14th, 1993, World Championship Wrestling held a card at the Paramount Theater. Unfortunately for them, the show was nowhere near a sellout. and show drew about 2,900 paid, with an additional 600 tickets that were comped. And Sting, I remember Sting was there, so it was Johnny B. Bad versus Tex Slazenger. Max Payne defeated Steve Regal, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I know Sting, Barry Windham, and they were at the end, main event. Sting defeated World WCW champion Big Van Vader by disqualification. Vader retains the title. I was there.
Nice.
But it wasn't. I don't remember not being a sellout. But I was a kid. '93. I was still a kid. I was more like, woo. I didn't care if there was nobody in the audience. So
when I was a kid, I didn't realize that there was a difference in size between WWF and WCW, because when you watched it on TV, WCW always looked filled, and when I would go to house shows, they always drew well. And I knew mainstream that WWF was bigger, but to me, it didn't seem like there was that much of a disparity.
Yeah, and you were right. Chris Benoit did face Ron Simmons in a fought to a double countout.
Yeah, and because I remember reading about that match in one of the magazines, and because it was such a random one, because they never wrestled before, and I was actually a big Chris Benoit fan at the time, and I'd been a Ron Simmons fan for years. And I remember it was like a wild brawl, it said, and so it just kind of captured my attention.
Oh yeah, like I said, man, it's just nothing beats those eras. I just loved it. It's awesome. That's what got me into wrestling. But
Right.
I started when I was 17, so that's a different thing.
So when you started watching, who were your favorite guys?
Well, what's the Four Horsemen? Arn Anderson. Let me see. Who else did I used to like? Hollywood Blondes. I used to like watching that. Johnny B. Bad. I don't think he was a great wrestler. I just think he was more theatrical and more entertaining. So I like
It's some good matches, though.
No, yeah, he had some good matches, but I just think it was more of his Little Richard gimmick than anything, and it really sold well for him. And Nikita Koloff. It was just a lot of Dusty Rhodes. I mean, it was just so many different. It's just because of the matches. The Legion of Doom was okay, but they were missing a lot of finesse, even though they're legends but they were just more of a brawler and just no nonsense beat up guys. But the people that are like, even Dusty Rhodes, even though he was a big guy, he was energetic and he was charismatic, and he told a story. I think the people that told the story intrigued me more because they had a passion. Like Eric Embry, even though Eric Embry was, are you familiar with Eric Embry?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure that Eric Embry, I mean, he never made it. I'm not saying like never made it, but the guy was charismatic, man. It was something about him that you just wanted to hate, and I always remembered him, think about it. He was not a major star. I mean, he was a major star for that territory, but to go into WWE, I always remember his character, he was a really badass, I liked him.
Yeah. Well, I think in like '89 in Texas, he was like the man. I think he was feuding with P.Y. Chuhai, which was Phil Hickerson, and I think he got like PWI Most Inspirational Wrestler of the Year that year also. But yeah, Eric Embry, he was part of the Fabulous Blondes, not the Hollywood Blondes, but he teamed with Ken Timms.
Yeah.
In the mid '80s, and I watched a lot of him back in the day, and. But yeah, I don't ever think he wrestled in the WWF.
No, I don't think he ever. And I hate saying that he didn't make it. I hate sounding like he's like if he failed because he was such a hell of a talent. I just think he didn't get the opportunity. I think that's the better word to say. He never made it. He just didn't get the opportunity to show his talents at a bigger stage.
I think a lot of people would have been happy to have the career that he had. He's still remembered.
I know. I still remember him. Even Iceman King Parson. I mean, that's another guy that I don't think he was a great wrestler. I never got that. Even when I was a kid, I was like, I don't get it. Him jumping in the air and just putting his ass in your face, knocking you out, unless he was like doing crazy tons of squats and his ass was made out of like steel. But I just always remember he just drew up in his air and his ass jumped in your face and the guy's knocked out and he pinned him. I'm like, okay, but all right. But he's memorable because he had that tattoo gimmick on his chest. He had the wild braid haircut. So I always remember them,
Yeah, I never got super into him, but he was always in all those like regional territories. He'd be in World Class. Then I know in Memphis he teamed with Brickhouse Brown as the Blackbirds in like '89, and he was always around. He's from St. Louis, I know. I wonder if he's like still in the area.
I know. What the hell did I see him? Not see him like personally, but I saw him on the computer. I think it was an autograph signing or something like that. That he was doing that. So he did pop up here and there. That I thought I was, oh, he's still alive. I hate sounding like he's still alive, but when you fall off the grid, you wonder if you're
Yeah.
dead or alive. And that's the only thing about the old school wrestlers that I hate saying like where are they? And you find out like, oh, he's working as a welder, which is not. I'm not saying that's a respectable trait. It's just you always think of like your superheroes as living the styling profile and jet flying, limousine ride and all that stuff, and you find out they just live in a normal life and they have nothing to show for it because of bad money deals or didn't manage their money right. I mean, look at Jake Roberts, millions. The guy should have been a millionaire, and I'm not saying he's broke as a joke, but he should have more money than he does have now.
Right.
It's just sad.
Do you remember Jason Lee from KCXW wrestled as Greg Gamma, kind of a shorter version of me, not quite as fat? Okay. He was at a casino and he ran into Mike George, who was a Central States guy back in the 80s that, a lot of people here would be familiar with. And he did some other things too. And yeah, he's working at the casino. And so that was kind of random when you talk about everyday jobs. And didn't you work as a police officer too?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, the only reason, it's a true story. The reason I did the police officer thing, not because I couldn't because of September 11th. Basically, when September 11th happened, it killed the business, and there was no opportunity for me to make it. So I had to get a job. I had to make a career. I had to make a living. So I decided to be a law enforcement officer, which is a respectable trade again. But again, I was just like, people are like, oh, wow, you're a cop. Oh, okay. Like looking at me like, what? Like, I'm sorry. What do you, don't like.
There's other wrestlers that became cops, after retiring. And I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's some famous guys that did that.
Rico.
Constantino?
Rico from WWE used to be the manager for, oh my God, Michael. He had the big old mutton chops and he wore the gold blazer.
No, I know Rico Constantino, right?
I don't remember his last name, but yeah,
he did the flamboyant gimmick. He was from OVW.
Yeah, and I think he was the manager for Colombo.
Yeah.
Was
it Billy and Chuck? Billy and Chuck?
Yeah, Billy and Chuck. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, he's a cop in Vegas. Look at Midian. He's a chef. He's a chef, and he does catering.
I think Gene Anderson from the Anderson Brothers, I think he did security guard work after he retired. I mean, he was still with the promotion in some aspect behind the scenes, but I think he did security work.
Well, I mean, like I said, people have to make a living. It's just that I don't want to be the Randy Ram, working at a meatpacking plant or cutting coleslaw at the KFC in the back. Like, hey, aren't you king of the streets cutting coleslaw? Which is sad to say, but it's just I try to keep low key in the positions that I have. It's hard not to stay out of the like. Hey, you look familiar. No, all right, no, it's not me. I don't want to say I'm ashamed. It's just I just don't like the questions of like, hey, did you know The Rock? How is he? Who is he? Well, I'm like, it gets old after a while.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. I did a little research, and okay, October 10th, 1998. You competed on a Junkyard Dog memorial show against Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
Yeah,
do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
How are you not going to remember that? I mean, obviously.
Oh yeah, I think it's on YouTube. I've seen the video that's on YouTube.
Yeah, I watched it. He hit you with the Superfly splash. So that was pretty cool that you got to take that, huh?
Oh hell yeah, dude! I mean, what person would not be honored to take the splash from Jimmy Superfly Snuka? Great guy, right. Love him to death. Most awesome dude that I ever met. Yeah, there is the dark side of that situation of his past, but again, it's difficult when you know somebody, and then you look at the other side of the fence, and you're like, man, that's not the same person. It's weird, But
Yeah,
again, is it fucked up that what happened? Yeah, absolutely. From a person looking in from outside in, like, wow, that's crazy. But when you know somebody and you see him and you're a nice guy, quiet, humble, never caused no drama, you're like, man, I can't picture those two people the same person.
yeah. Yeah, it's probably roid rage is what I'm thinking. Just at that early '80s time period, he was just went crazy. And but everything I ever heard about him, and I did meet him at a few conventions, he was always very nice and quiet and laid back, and you never would have guessed that he was kind of an animal in his earlier days.
The funny thing about that story is that being in the business, I learned a lot, and the knowing that story about the snooker story, and you can watch it on Wrestling with Tragedy. We did talk about that, but the funny thing about that situation is that, and I'm not throwing out names, but a reliable source told me that when that incident happened, that again, it's just rumor, speculation, but the source that I got it from was like, man, it's reliable. I believe him. That the reason that nothing ever happened, it was the exchange, money was exchanged because snooker was a top draw at the time, and they didn't want to lose them. So when they were getting questioned, apparently Vince, I think it was Vince Jr. came in with a briefcase, and then when he went in the room with the briefcase, then the story said that when he came out of that room, he didn't have the briefcase. So what was in the briefcase that he went in and never came back out with it?
Right. I mean,
Got to remember.
Snuka was this guy. Snuka was the, you know, top babyface really at that point because I think Hulkamania hadn't really started or it was getting ready to start, and he was, they had Bob Backlund, but Snuka was really the most popular guy there at the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's the thing. I just like that mysterious part about the situation. Just like one of those movies where you go into the basement of a garage, the garage, underground garage, and you see the guy with the raincoat and the Humphrey Bogart hat tipped forward with the envelope under his shoulder, and the car behind him, all you see is a silhouette, and you
Yeah.
exchange in the darkness, not knowing who that person is. Was it? So I just think like, wow, did Vince really pay somebody off to like make things disappear? Is it possible? I don't know, but it's interesting.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it 100%. He's done a
How
lot
far
of
would it? Yeah.
he's done a lot of shady stuff before, and he's done a lot of great stuff. He's ran the gamut as far as that stuff goes. So
I just like the story. If it is true, then it's just a weird, interesting story. But there's no proof, man. There's just proof. It's all speculative. It's all hearsay. So, and the people that know about it are no longer here. So, well, one person, which is Vince, and he ain't gonna say shit.
right. I did want to ask you about a couple of matches you had in ECW. One of them, December 6th, 1998, in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And the reason I ask you about this match is because you got to wrestle one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And I don't know if you'll remember this, but I watched the match this week, actually. You wrestled Tommy Rogers of the Fantastics.
You found that match?
Yeah.
You got to send it to me. That is my
It's
first.
It's on the High Spots subscription network because they have all the ECW house shows. You've got like 15 matches on there. I'll make sure you get to see it. I'll make sure
definitely see it. Yeah, I would love to see it because that was my I'm not gonna lie to you. I could remember I came out to the song with Busta Rhymes called Fire It Up. They picked that song for me. I came out and I just felt I had an awesome match. And as soon as I was done with that match, and he said, bro, if I knew you worked like that, I would have done more with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's how proud I was. And I was a huge fan of the Fantastics. The Fantastics versus the Midnight Express, great matches. So when I got to face Tommy Rogers, who was an awesome worker, I was just like in heaven,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the best time I had in my life, I wish I still had that vest.
I just remember, that first Clash of Champions, the one that you saw, that was like the first show you watched.
Yeah.
The Fantastics had that match with the Midnight Express where they just brawled all over the place, and that's kind of stuff didn't happen all the time back then.
Oh yeah, it's Stan Lane. That dude was phenomenal with those super kicks and those martial art kicks. And Beautiful Bobby with those leg drops and that punch that he just caught you out. The Fantastic were awesome. Also with Jim Cornette with the tennis racket, that was a good gimmick right there. The Fantastic was an awesome tag team, and and also the Midnight Express, awesome tag team. And when you put them together in the ring, it was just watching music play in front of you.
Right. Absolutely. Another match I wanted to ask you about is it looks like you had a series of matches with a guy that I didn't even realize he wrestled in ECW. A man named Rod Price.
Hardway Rod Price, love him, awesome dude. Beat the shit out of me. Dropped him on his head, then he dropped me on my head. But great guy, awesome. No, I don't know if whatever match you saw, I did a double underhook suplex, and I didn't bridge enough, and he landed on the back of his head, and he picked me up and dropped me on my head as a receipt. But again, awesome guy, man. Really, I respect him so much. I mean, I have him on my Facebook. He's just a world class, no pun intended, just a world class gentleman. I call him, and always treated me good. It's just that, I dropped him on his head and he had to get a receipt. But he always when I came in, he said, "Hey kid, good job," and he gave me a pat on the shoulder. But everybody said, "Dude, you dropped him on his head and he dropped you on your head." I said, "Okay." Yeah.
I remember watching him. I think he was teaming with John Tatum and the GWF is the Coast to Coast Connection.
Yeah.
They were a tag team, and but yeah, I didn't know he ever wrestled there. I think he might have just done that house show run because I think there was like 3 different matches they had on this High Spots thing of you guys against each other.
Well, he was what a part of the Baldies as well.
Is that right?
Yep, he was part of the Baldies. There is a video on the first appearance of the Baldies on YouTube when New Jack came out. We were wrestling Spike Dudley. We beat up on Spike, and that's when New Jack's music came out. That's when the Baldies were made that night. It was me, Rob Price, Vito. I want to say Pierre News was there, but I got to look at the footage.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Yeah, Pierre News. Go ahead.
So I remember the Baldies, and I remember you and Tony DeVito and Vito Lacarasso, but I was reading, just trying to do a little research for this episode, and I saw PN News was in the Baldies, and I had no memory of that.
Yeah, he was a great guy. It's just it was hard when they say, "Hey, you're gonna have PN News in the Baldies," and all I kept seeing is like, "That's the guy that used to go, yo baby, yo baby." That's all I kept thinking about. I just couldn't get it out of my head. But he was again, every guy that was part of the Baldies, from Ron Price to PN News, the guy is the most respectable, the most caring, and the most giving athlete. He gave me a lot of knowledge. I mean, I really appreciate what PN News done for my career. Even though he didn't stay with the Baldies as long, he gave me a lot of tutelage. Same as Rob Price. Great guys, bunch of guys.
I actually stole one of my moves from PN News because he used to do this thing in WCW where he would lift his arm up and then he'd do a forward roll over his opponent that was on the mat. And so I started doing what I called the Reed roll, where I would hit the ropes and do a forward roll onto guys because I was trying to think of flashier moves to do, and I stole it from PN News.
Well, yeah, PN News, man. I just couldn't get past that gimmick, though. That's the only thing. That Rapper's Delight gimmick. Watching that moose knuckle.
He could do some cool stuff. Like he was throwing drop kicks and he had that top rope splash. But they had him in that neon like spandex outfit, and it just it was trying to be WWF like, which is not what we wanted.
I'll give you a little bit of trivia there, but do you know who his half brother is?
Hold on a second. Give me a second on this. You're gonna say it, and I'm gonna know it. Go ahead.
Mantar.
Really? Bruiser Mestino. Okay.
They're half brothers. They didn't know each other until they got into the business.
Wow. Yeah, 2 very memorable and kind of short-lived gimmicks.
I don't remember Mantar doing anything else after that. I never really remember seeing him anywhere else. I'm not saying he wasn't. That's the only thing I remember him as.
I feel like he did like a very short stint in Memphis, just kind of based off of that notoriety, doing the Mantar thing, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I want to say that maybe Paul Lee brought him in for like an arena show, like just to do a job for like Spike Dudley or something when he was doing that giant killer gimmick. But Maybe I'm just thinking of PN News. I don't know.
The only people I know that I remember was Salvatore Bellomo from WWE. He was in there that Spike used to beat up on. But I don't remember Mantar. But again, it was probably before I even got there.
Yeah, I don't. I'm probably wrong, to be honest. Did you get to work a lot with Tracy Smothers?
I'm thinking. No, I never got into the ring wrestling wise with Tracy Smothers, but I did. He used to run the workouts before the shows, and he used to help us, get warmed up, and work on our techniques. And that dude was, again, a great, just lots of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. When he passed, I was like heartbroken because he was like, "You're killing me, man." Hey man. He was always that type of guy, and he was an awesome dude. Tracy Smothers was a good dude.
Yeah, I always he was on my list of people I wanted to wrestle just to be in the ring with him because I was a big fan dating back to his Smoky Mountain days, and
You was a Young
even
Pistols. You was a Young Pistols fan.
so it was funny because as a kid I hated the Southern Boys and the Young Pistols like when they did those gimmicks, and then when he went to Smoky Mountain and I was 13 by this point, I started appreciating how good he was, and then when I went back and watched the Young Pistols and the Southern Boys, I realized that I didn't give them the credit they deserve because they had that one awesome match with the Midnight Express at the Great American Bash.
Yeah.
Uh, and Steve Armstrong was great too, and I always loved Steve Armstrong, just a hell of an athlete.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, like I said, the Armstrongs were a hell of an athlete, but like I said, Tracy Smothers, and the Young Pistols was a cheesy gimmick, but it didn't take away from their talent. I just think they were
Right.
just phenomenal talent, and I think they could have been a better gimmick for them. But regardless, they were just top notch, workers.
Absolutely. So one segment on this show that I want to do with you, I'm going to pop it up on the screen right now. This is called Who Better Than Canyon? All right, and I know I haven't given you any kind of a heads up about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name two wrestlers or two tag teams, whatever it may be. And I want you to tell me who you think was either better or who you prefer, like whatever you want to say. So I'll go ahead and start. Okay, you okay with doing this?
Sure, go ahead, shoot.
All right. So pick one: Harlem Heat or Doom.
Harlem Heat.
Wow. I'm a Doom guy for sure.
I'm not knocking Doom. I love Doom. I love when they would with Teddy Long, but when I look at technical skills and a lot of more aerial moves, besides Stevie Ray was still like a Doom character. He was a little more grounded. Booker T just kind of like gave it a little caveat of flair. It was just almost like power and glory. You got the power, you got the glory. The guy who did the high flying stuff, and it just complemented each other. Doom was just I just hate saying the word one dimensional, but I mean they didn't have that much oomph into the gimmicks. It was just like a Road Warriors gimmick, just power.
Right. So you liked a little more finesse in your wrestlers, obviously.
I like a little bit of both. I like the little, hardcore, like the tough guy, like the Road Warriors. But if the one guy was the aerialist and the other guy was the power, and you complement each other by doing things together as a team, it kind of just meshes better.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember when I watched Harlem Heat, it was just there was such a big difference between Booker T and Stevie Ray and their skill set, like very, very different. Because Booker T would do all the fly-in moves and the bumps and the flashy stuff, and Stevie Ray would come in and maybe do a big boot and some choking and things like that.
Yeah, that's what it's just like I said. They both complemented each other to give you a little taste of both sides.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the reasons I like Doom better is they also had better tag teams to work with because Doom was around when you had the Steiner Brothers, the Rock and Roll Express, and all those teams. Whereas when Harlem Heat came along, tag team wrestling wasn't as strong, and they didn't have as many guys to really have those memorable matches with.
Yeah, but what made me was more of a Harlem Heat fan is the Booker T. Hogan, we're coming for you. I love it. I could put that as a ringtone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's a classic. I
Uh,
love it.
All right. The next one. Hacksaw Jim Duggan or Jake the Snake Roberts?
Oh, Jake the Snake, hands down.
I would have said Jake when I was a kid, but then I went and saw Hacksaw back in Mid South, and he was great. So I'm actually
I,
going to say Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
I never
Jake had
saw.
the better.
Okay, what?
Jake
Jake
had
had
the
the better
better
what?
promos, though. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jake had the better promos. He had the better psychology. I never saw Hacksaw in Mid South. I was only familiar with Hacksaw in WWE with the hoe and all that, and the 5 point stance gimmick. But if I will, I mean, like he reminded me of Bud Sawyer, but Bud Sawyer was better.
Mm-hmm.
I love Bud Sawyer.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah. So
I've never met anybody that had anything nice to say about him as a person, but in the ring, he was very, very good, very talented.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't meet your heroes. I mean, Buzz Sawyer was a hell of a talent, but again, I heard stories like he was not a likable person. But knowing me as a person right now, as the character, if I ever met him, I'd be like, yeah, go f yourself, man. It's whatever. But I'm at that level in my career where I could say that, which because I don't
Mm-hmm.
care anymore. I don't sit there and go, oh, yes, sir. The only people I could do that to is like really, really seasoned veterans like a Ric Flair or Lex Luger and Arn Anderson. Oh, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
it's different.
Yeah. All right. Next one. The Killer Bees or the Young Stallions?
I'm closing my eyes because I'm visualizing. I got to go with the Killer Bees.
Me
Reason
too.
why is because I like the mask gimmick, the way they used to
Mhm.
like cheat as baby faces.
Yeah, it was a unique gimmick, and I thought Brunzell and B. Brian Blair were overall better workers. I thought Paul Roma was a hell of an athlete, and the Stallions kind of had their thing going, but I would say Killer Bees for sure.
I'm trying to remember if the Killer Bees ever faced the Rougeau brothers. I just can't. I have a vision that they did, but I just can't remember if they did.
They did. They actually wrestled in Milwaukee in 1988. They did the big WrestleFest outdoor stadium show, which it wasn't on pay-per-view, but it was released on Coliseum Video. And this was, I think the Rougeaus had either just turned heel or they were getting ready to. And I think they went over in the match, and the Bees were kind of on the downside as far as status went.
Yeah, the reason I like the Rougeau brothers is when they were doing the All American Boy gimmick.
I love that song.
Yeah, I love that song too. That's just my favorite song. But I just like it because they pretended like, "Ooh, America, we love them," and then it was just it was awesome. It was a good gimmick.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, the final who better than Canyon question. Kamala or Abdullah the Butcher?
I say Kamala because Abdullah Butcher. I mean, he was just he was one dimensional. He was just a one trick pony. I mean, he's a legend. Don't get me wrong. He's a Hall of Famer. But when I watch his matches, it was always the same thing. It was always like, and I would have fucked him up if he would have cut my forehead with those fucking hepatitis razor blades that he had in his fingertips. And that's a straight shoot because I mean, nobody cuts me unless I know, But him doing that to other people, I would have whooped his ass,
Mhm.
But I mean, that's just me talking now. But
Yeah,
I just think Kamala was more. I mean, Kamala could do fucking leapfrogs.
yeah,
I mean, the guy was agile for a fat dude.
mhm,
So I mean, there's some fat dudes you're like, man, that dude is agile, you know,
right,
and stuff. I don't know how the fuck they do it, but it's just they have that gift.
right. When I was a kid, like 7 years old, and this would be like 1987, Kamala, I was deathly afraid of him. Like I thought he was under my bed, like legit. And so when I would get out of bed, I would jump across the room because I thought he was going to grab me. Like he scared the shit out of me. Do you remember that magazine that had him on the cover with the spike through Hogan's head? Have you ever seen
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. And Abdullah the Butcher, legend, like you said, I wouldn't let him cut me either. I might eat at his like chicken and waffles restaurant in Atlanta that he had, but uh, that's probably about it.
You know what's funny though? As being a pro wrestler, I wrestled Kamala. I wrestled George the Animal Steel. I wrestled Tommy Rogers. Everybody that passed away is pretty awesome. That I faced guys that I admired when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I achieved a goal. It's not even a goal. I never had a goal for that, but it's kind of weird. Like you're a kid, you idolize these people, and then one day you're facing across the ring from them as
Right.
equals. So it's just to me that's a little notch from my belt that I was kind of proud of,
Mm-hmm.
And Kamala, like I said, he was a nice guy. The guy when he did a splash, he adjusted my back because I remember when he landed on me, I felt my spine go click 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 because he did that big, no matter how he held back on that splash, he had that big belly, man. I mean, you can't suck it in. So when he did the splash, even when he landed and protected you, you were still getting hit with that belly, and that belly just adjusted me. Clack clack clack. I just remember my spine just popping. I'm like, God damn.
Right.
But never hurt me.
Yeah, gotcha. So when you mentioned wrestling George Steele and Kamal and those guys, I mean, I had kind of the same experience when I wrestled you because I don't even know if you remember that we wrestled, but we were in a Royal Rumble style match back in 2016 for KCXW. And, I was always a big ECW fan growing up. And so getting the chance to just kind of mix it up with you in the Battle Royal a bit was a cool thing for me as a guy who grew up as a fan.
Yeah, but then you got in the ring with one of the greats, Ricky Morton, and I just fell in the back seat. So I haven't wrestled Ricky Morton. That would have been an honor. I mean, he's still alive, but since I'm not really wrestling as much, I don't think we'll ever cross paths. If we ever did, I hope we will. But you got the same taste I got with the other wrestlers.
Right.
I mean, if he passes away, who can say they wrestled Ricky Morton?
Mm-hmm.
You can.
Yeah, other than my kids being born and my wedding day and all that stuff, that's my proudest moment in life and the thing that I'll take with me because he's been my favorite wrestler since I was 6 years old.
Do you keep in
So,
contact with him?
yes and no. Like, I would say it's been about 3 years since we teamed. I've texted him a couple times and he always responds right away. But I don't bug him and stuff, and he's on the road doing his thing. But he's always very cordial and responds right away if I text him about something. But I've only done it like twice.
Yeah, you just don't want to. You feel like you're bothering him, but you're not really. But you just feel in the back of your head like I feel like I'm bothering him, even though he says no.
It's like one of those things where it was a huge moment for me to team with him, but he goes all over, and I'm just another guy he teamed with that weekend. Now we spent the whole weekend together, and it was a lot of fun, and he was very just great to hang around with. But I mean, he's all over the place, and I'm just a guy that he was with that one weekend. So,
So when you say you spend the whole weekend with him, is that another show?
so when I
that's a good one.
Where's that edit button? No.
And the next topic of this moment.
Right. I was more nervous picking him up from the airport than I was teaming with him, actually, because I was just picking up Ricky Morton. And then we went out to dinner at Applebee's, and then we rode to the seminar the next morning together and trained with him for a few hours. And then we went to the show together and wrestled. And then we stopped at, McDonald's on the way back, got some fast food, and I dropped him off, and that was that. So.
Yeah, I wish I would have had the opportunity to wrestle him on the KCXW show. If Jordan Smiley would have reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, would you want to wrestle, against you, like a tag team, like
Mm-hmm.
if that would have happened, that would have been fun." But
Yeah.
I don't think it was in the budget. So no, I'm not making fun of him. I just think it was not in the budget. So I think you could only bring one person at a time.
Yeah, and that was a charity show too, so we all wrestled for free. I mean, except Ricky because he was brought in and as a special guest. But we raised $800 for Midwest Animal Rescue that night, which was kind of cool. So
see, but the problem with, and again, I'm not knocking Jordan. That's not a knock. But if he would have reached out to say, "Hey, Angel, can you come up for a charity?" and I would have said, "Okay, would you at least give me $20 in gas and buy me a Subway sandwich?" I would have done it, just to gas and a sandwich, and just go home happy. I would have done it. A lot of people don't ask because they're afraid they're going to insult me. If you don't ask, you don't know. and it depends on my mood. And he would have caught me on the right time, like Ricky Morton. Hell yeah, I would have come up. I would have made a weekend out of it.
So you're still open to taking bookings?
I'm still open to taking bookings, but I'm very picky, and it depends who reaches out to me. Like if you reached out to me, if Savage reaches out to me, I got friends. Hey, Angel, can you do me a favor? I'm not that difficult. I'll say, well, are they paying? How much? Well, this is all they can afford. Okay, I'll do it. Get out the house, change the pace. But I'm just not looking. But if somebody reaches out to me, I would do it.
Awesome.
Buy some of that Dogecoin for my cryptocurrency. Like,
oh, you into that stuff?
I bought some of that Dogecoin, man. I bought like $200 worth, and I just like set it and forget it. Hey, if it takes, look, let me tell you a story, brother. When Bitcoin first came out, I am not lying to you. When it first came out, I was like, that's interesting. Did my research. I'm a research fanatic, just like wrestling. Interesting. I'm going to buy some. Then I got scarcity. Oh, man, I don't know. It's probably, I don't want to lose money. And look at it now. Look at it now, brother. You got to pull the trigger once in a while and just take some lumps. So I took the Dogecoin, spent $200. Now I got Dogecoin. I got 4,000 coins. If it happens and it takes a success, it's worth it. But if I lose $200, I lose $200. It's better than $5,000, if that makes sense.
Right. I'm a complete idiot when it comes to that stuff, but one of our KCXW guys that wrestles is Richard Goldman. His name's Jason Fiola. He is doing really well with that stuff, and he's supposed to like sit down and teach me sometime because
Which was Jason Fiola?
He came after you. He wrestled as the 1%er. He carried like a golf club, and he was one of the top
with the pink sweater over his shoulder. I think he was.
Yeah.
I see. I watch a couple. I still flip through the channels, and I saw it on YouTube right now, and I'm like, and I saw him. Yeah. So.
Yeah, he's a really good guy and knows his stuff. So I was gonna get with him and kind of figure all that Bitcoin stuff out. So
it's just an investment. It's just like anything, man. There's going to be some, trial and error things. I mean, it's something that just like any type of investment, it can go up, it could go belly down. It's just, you got to take the opportunity and take the chance to take a risk. Great reward comes a lot of risk. It is what it is,
All right. One more segment on this show is called, Oh, You Didn't Know?
You're gonna give me a heart attack?
yeah. I didn't give you a heads up about any of this stuff.
No, it's fine. I'll jump on that.
So in this segment, it's about naming somebody, whether a wrestler or team or whoever, that you feel was really underappreciated or undervalued, underrated, someone that you think deserved more recognition. And so just feel free to think for a minute and just let us know who you come up with.
The Latin heartthrob Al Perez.
Wow.
He was a hell of a talent, great body. He was a high flyer. I just don't think, ever since he jumped in the ring with that boombox and he tripped over the top rope and shattered that was it. I think it was a WWE he was doing that gimmick. He had the radio and he tried to jump over the top rope and he tripped on it and he dropped the radio. It shattered.
Wow, I do not remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. And but I don't think he ever got an opportunity. And Eric Embry, that's another one we already had talked about. Those are the guys I think that man, they would have been. I would have saw more out of them if they would have been in a, But it's just like, but you know what? It's just like Bam Bam Terry Gordy, when he was in the Fabulous Freebirds, and then all of a sudden he ended up in WWE under a hood as the Executioner. I was like, are you shitting me? How can that be?
I actually preferred that they did that at the time, and it's only because Terry Gordy had a lot of overdoses and health problems, and he was an all-time great, but by 96 he wasn't the same Terry Gordy. He was slower, and he just, I would hate for him to come out as Terry Bam Bam Gordy and be doing jobs for Aldo Montoya on Superstars, and I think that kind of protected him a bit by having the Executioner gimmick.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I remember now I forgot his name. I want to say Albright. He died, but I
Gary
can't remember.
Albright.
Gary,
Yeah,
thank you. Gary Albright. I think they wrestled against each other in Japan a lot. And that was a hell of a wrestler, Gary Albright.
yeah. Have you seen the videos of him like chucking Vader around like he's nothing?
No, I never saw that one.
Oh yeah, there's videos of Gary Albright just like German suplex and Vader with like no assist, just and it he was a beast for sure.
Hey, I would have loved to see that. Like I said, those guys are just they're one of a kind. Dr. Death Steve Williams, Gary Albright, Bam Bam Gordy. They were different breed. Dirty Dick Slater. These guys were just like jaws of granite.
Hmm. Going back to Al Perez, like what I always remember about Al Perez is the first time I saw him, I would have been 8 years old, and he came into the NWA and he had the big feud with Nikita Koloff. He was managed by Gary Hart. And he wasn't quite main event guy. He was like maybe third, fourth from the top, but he was in a good spot. And then he went to the WWF like a year later, and they had him like in the opening match wrestling guys like Jim Powers, and he'd kind of trade wins with those guys, but he always had a good look. He was a good wrestler. I only think that the only thing that held him back was there was maybe a charisma deficit, and his promos weren't necessarily the strongest, but definitely a talent that could have, someone could have used better.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know who another talent that I think that was not given a good opportunity? Shane Sewell, Glamour Boy. He was in TNA as the referee, the blonde referee, and it was a Shane. He was in the Puerto Rico and IWA, and he worked for Carlos Colon. He's from Canada. Hell of a worker. Hell of a worker. I'll send you a video if you want, but the
Yeah, I'm
guy,
not familiar. Did he wrestle as, was it called Glamour Boy Shane? Because I remember hearing that name, but I've never
Gla-
seen him wrestle.
oh, dude, Glamour Boy Shane. That's right, Glamour Boy Shane, bro. He was a Ric Flair. He was charismatic. He was pretty. Yeah, he had a great body. The guy was a phenomenal, and still is to me to this day, a phenomenal athlete. I just don't think TNA used him to his full potential. And
Mhm.
he was. I wrestled him many times. I love wrestling him.
And a guy that I always thought was great, White Lightning Tim Horner.
Oh my
Um,
God, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, I think that, Jim Cornette talks about him a lot in kind of a negative light because of previous business management issues with Smoky Mountain Wrestling. But even Cornette would tell you that in the ring, Horner could go. And, I remember watching Tim Horner team with Brad Armstrong and the Lightning Express. And Horner was always a very talented guy that kind of like Al Perez, maybe had some charisma deficit that may have held him back, and he was a little bit on the smaller side. But I was always a big Tim Horner fan.
Right on, right on. Yeah, I remember him, but I just never, I never like followed his career. But I remember he was a hell of an athlete.
Hmm.
But like I said, definitely check out Glamour Boy Shane. You'll definitely won't regret it.
I will. I'll do that. I'll take your recommendation.
Yeah, I'll try to find a video if I can.
Cool. So podcasting is really the avenue that you're looking towards as far as the future goes. Where ultimately would you like to see Angel Medina go in the podcasting world?
I want to be mainstream. I'm trying to take it to the next level. I'm trying to make this as a career. I want to be the Rush Limbaugh, the Joe Rogan. I want to be a household name. I mean, I was a household name in wrestling. I want to be the household name in podcasting. So, I want to build that brand. Because I do have a brand, that I need to keep going with. So I have a lot to give. I mean, not knocking anybody in the podcast business, but when you just like wrestling, if you start at the bottom, you got to build it.
Hmm.
But if you come into I'm trying to get a name like Gronk and you come into wrestling, you already have a brand. So you come in wrestling, yeah, you're not a wrestler, but you already have a brand. So now you got to earn that spot because you already have something behind you to catapult you.
Hmm.
So you kind of like a little bit of step ahead, a little bit. So I'm just trying to get that to that next level. I'm trying to get to the Shannon level, man. The read this bankroll. You know.
uh, What advice do you have to someone that's just getting started in the podcast world?
Just stick it out, man. It's just like anything, man. If you have a passion for it, just stick it out. It's going to pay off. It's just if it was so easy, everybody be doing like the caveman. It's so easy a caveman can do it. But it just takes commitment and dedication, and you can't quit. A lot of people do things and they think looking for the fast buck, thinking that they're going to make $1 million, and that's not what I'm. That you're not going to do it. You're going to get disappointed. You're going to quit because you're going to invest money into something and you're not going to see any return. So it's just have fun with it. Have fun with it. Don't cultivate it, nurture it, build it up, water it. Just like a plant, and then one day it's going to bear fruit. So you just definitely got to just let it, give it time, let it grow. This is how I
Right.
look at it. I learned that a long time ago. You got to baby it and make it grow.
Mhm.
But
So, tell me some more about the podcast that you're doing now.
right now I'm doing Wrestling with Tragedy. Wrestling Tragedy is the dark side of pro wrestling, almost like Dark Side of the Ring, but a little bit better. But we just, because you get into perspective of my professional wrestling experience. Yeah, you have the Jim Cornettes and you have everybody doing the show and stuff like that. But again, we kind of dig into the dark side of the business and try to see, and try to analyze it, because there's two things that we have that those other people don't have. We have my police background as an investigative skill to see the holes in the cases, and also another police officer that's on the team that investigates as well with me, and also Pierce Austin, who is in the business of investigative security. So he investigates and looks into things from a different perspective. So you have a pro wrestler's viewpoint and you have a police officer's viewpoint. So with that type of ingredients, it's an ingredient for success.
If someone was wanting to check out that podcast for the very first time, is there a certain episode you'd recommend that they start with? Like maybe the episode you're most proud of?
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know the number because it's a list of them, but definitely check out the I just say the best one I think I enjoyed to do the most. They're all so good, man. But if I had to pick one, I think the Velveteen Dream story was pretty interesting. Check that one out, and also the Chris Benoit and the Jake Roberts one that I just recently did. Definitely you can't miss it. You definitely could check us out on YouTube, but also if you want to get the latest and greatest hot off the presses, you definitely got to check it out on the Russo brand at Patreon/Russo TWC. You can't beat it. It's a subscription platform, and you get all first videos on firsthand. But if you could wait, you could catch it on YouTube. And then my other podcast is Killing the Business on the MWA Podcast Network, which again, this is just talk about the business like like we're talking right now. And we kind of like throw out a different spin and kind of like yell and stomp our feet about the business, It's killing the business, brother.
It's a funny story. I was listening to an episode of that show this week, and one of the guys you had on with you brought up Teddy Long, and he said, Teddy Long, you guys were talking about how AEW didn't want Teddy Long because he was too old.
Yeah.
And the guy said Teddy Long was 74 years old. And I was like, man, this guy's full of shit. He's got to be at least 15 years off. Like Teddy Long's probably 58, 59. I looked it up. That motherfucker is 73 years old. I can't believe it.
Holla, holla. Black don't crack.
Apparently not.
But like I said, man, I just think it was messed up that they just, if it is that they didn't hire him because he's old, that's just a lame excuse.
So where can people, do you have like a Facebook page or do you just have your personal page? Like I know you have your different podcasts and where people can find them, but do you have like an Angel Medina page?
Yeah, I'm easily found. You have it. And no,
Wait,
but
do I
yeah,
have the wrestler? Wait a minute. I thought I had, your personal page. Do I just have the wrestler page?
no, that's my personal page. I don't have
Okay.
a wrestler page and a personal page. I don't have time for that. Yeah, I just have it's Angel. I don't even know. It's Angel Medina Jr. at Facebook.com. you can't miss it. And an ECW Baldy Angel. And you can find me there. And I have a Twitter, a.medina262 on Instagram. So I'm pretty easy to find,
All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up then. I appreciate you coming on the show. And
Do I
for
get
my
to read
first
this
episode,
T-shirt?
absolutely.
I was the
Absolutely. I
first
just got to get
guest.
some made.
Okay.
I can get a plug-in for the next 3 days. They're 20% off at Pro Wrestling Tees. So,
I have to tell you something
special.
after the show. Yeah, but good.
All right. But thanks for coming on. It was really cool to have you on as my first guest, to have a name, someone that people will remember, and I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor. I mean, you get, and the door is open for you to come on my show. I expect you to be on my show because I definitely want your input on certain topics when we get it. You never know. It might be this week. It might be the following week. We'll see.
I would love to do that.
Thank you. I
All right.
appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care.